We are now live on YouTube, Chairman, so you can start the meeting as soon as it's past.
Thank you, Jeanette. Okay, it's now past, Jeanette, so I'll begin.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Boston Borough Council's Corporate and Community Meeting. My name's George Corner, and I'm the chairman of this committee. My vice chair is Councillor Deborah Evans, who will be joining us shortly after work at 7 p.m. As with all virtual meetings, and to allow public recognition of those in attendance, we will now take a roll call. If Jeanette, could you please take that roll call?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll read out names alphabetically. If members could just acknowledge they are present. Councillor Tom Ashton.
Present.
Councillor Alan Bell. Councillor Bell. I'll come back to Councillor Bell. Councillor Danny.
Present. So, just before we go, somebody changed my name to Councillor Steph. Why is coming on my picture?
Right. I'll just quickly change that.
You're now Councillor Stephen Woodliff, Anton, aren't you?
Yes, and now you're in a suit. Oh, that's a magic one.
Yes.
Apologies for that.
Fast change this was. Couldn't appear with a scruffy pullover. Wasn't
Councillor
right.
Councillor Andorian.
Present.
Councillor Martin Howard.
Present.
Councillor Frank Pickett. Councillor Judith Skinner.
Present.
Councillor Judith Wellborn.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Woodliff. Could you just bear with me, Chairman?
Present, yeah. Okay.
Apologies, Chairman. That was Councillor Bell. He has lost connection. I will resend him the link shortly. I'll just finish the roll call. Portfolio holder, Councillor Nigel Welton.
I'm present.
Thank you. Attending as an observer is Councillor Paul Goodale.
Present.
Andy Fisher, the Assistant Director for Assets.
Present.
And Clive Gibbon, Economic Development Manager.
Present, Jeanette. Thank you.
That concludes the roll call, Chairman. Pippa's trying to get Councillor Bell reconnected as well.
No worries, Jeanette. Did we cover everyone in the roll call there, Jeanette?
I believe so. I did call out Councillor Stephen Woodliff. I have a feeling I didn't wait for his reply.
Well, I am here, yes.
Well, we can see him, so we'll take that as a big...
Thank you.
It's not a cardboard cutout, it is me.
The other one's just got the pullover on.
Yes.
Okay, so that concludes the roll call. Thank you for that, Jeanette. We'll now move into part one of the agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence or any substitutions, Jeanette?
There are none, Chairman. As you said, Councillor Evans will be late, but otherwise, no.
Thank you. And then next part is to sign and confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of October. If any member wishes to comment, please use the raise hand facility. And
no one's indicating, Chairman.
Thank you for that. So we agreed that that is the correct record. Next up is to receive any declarations of interest in respect to any of the items. Again, use the raise hand facility.
No one's indicating, Chairman.
Thank you, Jeanette. I just thought it'd be prudent for myself to mention that there is an element of importation at my workplace. but I've sought the relevant advice on this and it doesn't affect my capacity to contribute to tonight's meeting. Okay, and have we received any written questions?
From members of the public, Chairman, no, there are none.
Okay, so that concludes part one. We're moving to part two. There's only one item of business today, and that is the report on the Port of Boston Gateway for Growth. This appears on page 7 of your agenda pack. The report is going to be carried out by Mrs. Michelle Sachs, but instead we're joined by Clive Gibbon this evening. Clive, when you're ready, would you like to present your report?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and good evening to members of the committee. So I thought I'd just put some context around the report rather than doing a sort of physical presentation. I thought I'd just do a bit of preamble before we start. But so that the report you have in front of you tonight reflects a real economic opportunity that the borough and the wider geography of the South East Lincolnshire has. Our starting point for the Gateway to Growth was to set out our economic vision to capitalise on the economic potential of the Port of Boston post leaving the European Union on January the 1st, 2021. And that vision is simply to create a successful, resilient and connected economy which can compete on a national scale and deliver sustainable infrastructure that's fit for the future, enabling economic, environmental and social regeneration. For this, the economic rationale behind the Gateway to Growth project is clear and will provide huge opportunities for local and sub-regional areas to strengthen their economies, add value to the private sector investment and carbon reduction related strategies, nurture and support existing business development, and enhance connectivity that supports the Midland engine and the manufacturing belt of the UK. The vision to create a successful, resilient and connected economy chimes with Boston Borough Council's own economic strategy, investment and assets. And by working across the public and private sectors in partnership, we can create a super efficient logistics hub. And through the Port of Boston, be a slick service catalyst which can compete on a national scale and deliver sustainable infrastructure that's fit for the future. Excuse me. Enabling South East Lincolnshire to safeguard the existing 40,000 plus jobs, and through new innovation, create further employment and opportunities to inspire our communities to realise their full potential and deliver a step change in economic, environmental and social regeneration. The East of England, and especially South East Lincolnshire, is synonymous with the fresh produce food sector, including having the largest food logistics and storage cluster servicing the UK via 1,000 plus trucks per day, and over a fifth of all freight commodities transported by road in 2017 was food related. Successful areas and regions capture and harness current and emerging opportunities from their local assets and investments, and where we see the Port of Boston affirming South East Lincolnshire as a place to invest. To deliver our economic vision and to unlock the huge potential of the Gateway to Growth project, we need to invest and indeed support projects of significance that will open up and create economic interventions which stimulates a confident environment that retains and attracts businesses, builds on our diverse skills base, and a physical, social and cultural infrastructure that builds out the overall competitiveness of the area. The UK food industry is keen to deliver substantial growth after leaving the European Union by adding value to food imports and driving strong export growth across the whole of the supply chain. We believe that working closely with partners across the commercial, education, public sectors, and a world-class efficient port logistics hub with improved road and rail infrastructure supporting the UK and international markets, sustainable growth like this is deliverable. The Borough of Boston and South East Lincolnshire is a strategic economic location for food production, processing, logistics and storage, and the associated supply chains. Centred between the manufacturing heartland of the Midlands and mainland Europe, the Port of Boston is suitably positioned to take full advantage of the economic growth potential that is location, the scaling up of fresh produce imports and exports through its proximity to the Dutch ports of Amsterdam and Rotterdam, a multimodal connectivity through sea, road and rail, and a real opportunity to become a food port of the UK. The Lincolnshire food sector is based on both strong local and regional food production, including the receiving and processing millions of tons of imports each year from over 39 countries worldwide. Therefore, an efficient, timely and reliable international and national logistics are essential to sustain the 100,000 plus jobs in agriculture and food processing across Lincolnshire and neighbouring local enterprise partnerships in areas of East Midlands and East Anglia, known as the UK Food Valley. The food industry is keen to deliver post-Brexit growth, and to that end, we believe that with the Port of Boston being front and centre regional gateway hub, delivering the right skills through the Centre of Food and Fresh Produce Logistics, creating the right environment for business investment, delivering much improved connectivity, and through the support of this council, neighbouring authorities, the business community, and through the opportunities set out in the paper before you tonight, the Gateway to Growth project is deliverable. Thank you, Chair, and now I'm happy and open to take questions.
Thank you, Clive. I'll now open the matter for debate. Does anybody have any comments to make or any questions to ask? Jeanette, can you see any hands there?
I was just going to say nobody's indicating, but Councillor Danny is now indicating.
Thank you, Jeanette. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my hand is too small there on the screen. Probably you cannot see it. I'll start waving. The thing which is I would like to say is I thank Clive and the team for the effort and the hard work they have done and to get us this information. It's really, for me, I can't say it's a dream, but I hope the dream will be a reality and we can get the Port of Boston where we want it to be. Because talking about 40,000 jobs, talking about opportunities, talking and being ambitious to say that Boston Port will be the food port of the UK, the #1. It's great to hear these things. And it's great to see the figures in billions, which is probably as a small economy of another country. So my question to Clive or Councillor Nigel, what's I think probably, yeah, what's the time scale on this project? How far or how long will it take to deliver the project, if somebody can answer? Thank you, either Clive or Nigel, that would be appreciated. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Clive or Nigel, who wishes to respond? Clive?
Yeah, I can take that one, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, a very good question. These projects of this scale and size do take a while. The beauty we've got at the moment is we've got a fully functional port who has got spare capacity to bring in goods and services through the port. We are, I suppose, sort of semi-reliant on the port widening its gate through the development of the barrage, but we're looking, to start to expedite this quite quickly, because obviously, COVID aside, we've got Brexit coming up fast and furious. We've got our importers and exporters who are have containers on the docksides in Amsterdam and incurring charges. So we really have to work and in partnership, and that's why we are bringing along the port, our commercial partners, the university, county councils, to try and expedite this project as quickly as we possibly could. All the partners have been on board from day one, They know exactly the timescales. They know exactly the ask. They know what the art of the possible is. It's a case now of actually just putting it all into practice. There is a process we need to go through the checks and balances, but we are now doing that process now. We are sort of putting markers down with Midlands Connect to make sure that they're on their radar, so we can actually start to progress conversations around the A16, the A17 and the A52 to try and facilitate again sort of a better road coming out and going into the port area. We're also talking to Network Rail around the rail infrastructure and how we can improve that. We're working with colleagues over near Grantham, where there does seem to be some national bottlenecks that we need to overcome. So that there are some issues that aren't readily doable, but we are going through the process to get them done. As I say, you know, we are fortunate. We have a ready-made port who's extremely keen to start to sort of get the containers coming in, the goods flowing, and obviously our businesses are quite recipient to the speed of that.
Thank you, Clive. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to say that I fully support the aims and ambitions of this project. My question is, who do you see as our biggest rival for this business, and what advantages do they have over us and vice versa?
Thank you for that.
Well, I suppose our rivals are most of the ports down the East Coast and the South Coast. And obviously, they are slightly better positioned. They have slightly better ready-made infrastructure. However, ports do tend to categorize themselves into different sectors. So if you look at sort of the gateway port of London, they tend to do very much sort of around the heavy lifting type goods in and out through 40, 50 foot containers. Southampton again is very much around sort of building materials. We've got the Humberside, who looks very much after the sort of utilities. So there is a slight gap around the food imports. They all do a bit of food, but they're not sort of one generic port. So we see that as a bonus, that we can actually use that as a hook. But for sure, you know, you've got some big players out there, so the Felixstows of this world, the London Gateways, Southampton, and of course Immingham we shouldn't lose sight of as well. But also these ports are getting slightly congested. They are looking to have hub and spokes, so they are looking to, is there a possibility to have bigger boats going into the gateway, for instance, on the Thames, but then having little feeder ships that come back round into other ports around the country. Again, Boston is central to the UK. It's central to the manufacturing market. The port already import lots of steel products for the motor industry in the Midlands, so we know it can be done because it is being done. So and the business had that confidence that we can deliver this. But yeah, so there will always be competitive. It's a very competitive industry, and this is why we haven't necessarily gone too wide and too public with it just yet, or prior to now, is just so we just need to get all our ducks in a row to make sure it is all possible.
Thank you very much. Chair, if I could just make one more comment.
Yeah, feel free.
Thank you. It's good to think about the climate change agenda in reducing road miles as well. If the logistics are travelling down to the southern ports at the moment, if they could come into ours and it's going to make it better for climate change, I think that is a really good plus as well. More of a comment than a question. Thank you.
Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. I mean, this is going to take more the direction of comments rather than question, more observations, I suppose. Very clearly, the port has been this town and areas lifeblood and prosperity through many, many centuries. And whilst in more recent times, I suppose you say that our local economy has diversified away from reliance on our port and become ever more reliant on our agricultural land. This represents, to my mind, an opportunity for those twin pillars of our local prosperity, both the port, the sea, and the land, the veg basket of England that we have all around us, to come together. And the amount of money which is being asked for here, whilst it's not a tiny sum, in the great scheme of things of projects of this scale, is incredibly modest. And the one thing that our port has got, and I'm delighted to hear it mentioned, is the rail connection, and exploring what we can do with that rail connection, how we can enhance that rail connection, how we can make the most out of that, because my understanding is that we are the only port between the Humber and Harwich with a functioning rail link onto the dock. King's Lynn having lost that link relatively recently, and in my view entirely foolishly. So having that facility available, I think, gives the Port of Boston something that its competitors locally certainly can't achieve. And if we're looking at striving for a low carbon future, something that's going to take vehicles off of the road, then being able to put goods directly onto rail is very clearly a fantastic thing to have, and it's really exciting that discussion so far is suggesting that has potential to expand ever further. But simply bringing material closer to the food industry, the food processing industry that we've got here, I hope will keep this area competitive for generations to come. The last major port expansion or last major port development that we saw on the Wash was the last major port development that was seen on the coast of the Wash, I think, was in 1896 when Sutton Bridge tried to develop a new dock and a new rail link. And anyone who has followed the history of that, it wasn't particularly successful. So it's delightful that Boston has this opportunity. It feels very much like this is early days. This is the almost the seed funding to see what's feasible, to see what's possible. But it is, I think, the one of the most ambitious, potentially ambitious suggestion to come forward in respect of the port, of the port. And if it can, as I say, bring us right back round to the twin pillars of our agriculture, our horticultural industries, and our port working hand in glove, then I'm incredibly excited by this. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Woodliff.
Yes. Can you hear me, George?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, for that. I've got some questions really relate to the Appendix 1. Is it Appendix 1? It's on page 17. How that relates into it, I'm not quite sure. But the question really is, for me, is that I noticed reading this on page 17, that the UK continues to be the top destination in Europe for attracting foreign direct investment. And it goes on to say that by the end of 2019, the UK's inward foreign direct investment stock levels reached $2.1 trillion, second only to the United States. The question is, with all that vast amount of money coming in, has any come our way? Has any money come our way you know, because obviously it's a huge amount of money. 2.1 trillion is quite a lot of money. It's quite a lot of noughts behind it actually as well. But I wonder whether any of that money is actually coming in our direction. Can Clive answer that, or somebody else? Yeah.
Yes, well, I can. Short answer is yes, it has. We have some international development 2 years ago through Aniela Chicks, who are a Irish company, and they invested 25 million into the Boston area. And also we've had a lot of businesses now that obviously have won import contracts or export contracts. So that money is not necessarily sort of a tangible structures, but it's also business money as well. So we have had some of that, but undoubtedly majority has probably gone to the major cities through the financial institutions. But certainly we have had a small bite of that cherry, definitely.
Well, that's a step forward, isn't it? Because obviously if there's that quantity of money coming into the country from, I don't know where it's coming in from, but wherever it is coming in from, and it does say in the report, it says on greenfield capital sites as well. So it's not just, what do they call it? Well, foreign direct investment stock, but also it talks about greenfield capital expenditure. So that must mean that some of that money is actually going into things on the ground rather than going into the banking sector. Because I think the great worry about this is that this huge quantity of money comes in, it goes to the merchant banks in the City of London, and then it goes somewhere else. So because obviously, you know, being one of the major financial, if not the major financial centre in the world, London attracts a lot of money, but it also sends it out to other places. The question really, I suppose, is, you know, for this a vast amount of money coming in and going elsewhere, are we getting the investment from it that perhaps we're entitled, you know, that we would like? We can't say we're entitled to it because it's other people's money, isn't it? But certainly we would like. That's really the thing, isn't it? Go on, yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I think obviously going forward as well, Lincolnshire has been had the great or you know the great announcement by DTI that we are have a high potential opportunities initiative going as well. So some of that investment that's probably going elsewhere, the UK government now are looking at areas around the country. Lincolnshire has been given automation and robotics because we are pretty good at that. So and what that does actually mean though is that the consulates around the world will be putting Boston and Lincolnshire front and centre of their inward investment propositions. So this time last year, we probably wouldn't have been there, but now we are definitely front and centre for inward investment around new technologies, tangible structures. So it's not just necessarily about money going to merchant banks or the financial sector. It is actually now coming into grassroots business.
Thank you, Clive.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Can you see any other people raising their hands? Oh, we've just had Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more as probably just a remark on the report. I may be wrong, I may be right, but if we bring these kind of businesses and we start trading in this kind of scale, and as we see from the report, we may go even global, not staying just with Europe. I think Clive maybe will correct me. It will be some taxes paid for the ships coming to the ports, if I'm right. So that will bring as well an extra money probably for the port and Boston in general. Is that correct, Clive? Yeah.
Yes, it is. The port. Well, obviously there'll be import taxes anyway, and duties, but also the port will, like all ports, will charge a disembarkment charge or discharge of the vessels. So, yeah, if we can get more vessels and bigger vessels with more high-grade stock, then obviously the investment and the pricing structure will go with that. And obviously, then the busier they get, the opportunities to create more jobs as well.
Thank you. I believe it's Councillor Wellborn there placed a hand up, but it's now disappeared. Did you wish to comment?
Yes, I did really. It's just a question. At the moment, everything that's produced in Lincolnshire on the land is sent through to distribution centres for the supermarket and then literally sort of repackaged and sent back to the county to the supermarkets. Will this change in any aspect to save the road miles and obviously help the sort of climate, or will it still remain the same, that everything will go to distribution centres and be brought back to supermarkets in the area? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Clive, do you wish to comment?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's driven by supermarkets, so probably eventually that won't change because there is the distribution hubs around the country. But what we are looking to do, if we're with partners looking to support the growth in the port, is actually then look at how we can cluster businesses around the port. So instead of actually sort of doubling handling, so it comes into the port, then goes off to somewhere else, to a distribution centre and then back. We want to build the business community around the port, so all the added value is done at the port. So then all it is just one lorry or one trip from Boston to a central distribution point. And yes, unfortunately, it does come back again. But that's driven by the supermarkets.
Thank you, Clive.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anyone else wishing? Oh, Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. I would just come, if I may come back, just to pick up on page 11 at 2.5. I'm really pleased to see that as part of this, we appear to bring together support from the county council. Again, providing the borough council goes ahead with this, that it has the support of LCC and a commitment there to look at Southern Lincolnshire with revised route action plans, identifying strategic and other local problems and opportunities. I mean, we all know what many of those pinch points are, but I'm pleased to see the county council recognising that there are problems and giving an undertaking to look at them as part of what we're doing here. We all know what the pinch points are, and I'm pleased to see that. I mean, more broadly, I note that our recommendations are that we simply note the recommendation to be made to Cabinet. On the basis of the report that we have in front of us and the presentation that we've been given and hearing comment from colleagues, this is effectively a £20,000 vote of confidence in the assets and facilities and the economic drivers that we've got here in Boston, that hopefully will unlock growth potential that delivers jobs and prosperity in what is certainly a challenging time we've got at the moment, but will deliver long into the future. I'd like to go one step further, Mr. Chairman, if you'd indulge me and move formally the recommendations, but I'd move that we note and support the recommendations to be made to Cabinet, and the rest of them as they've got here in the paper. If anyone would be willing to second me, I'd move and support that we note and support the recommendations as written on page 7 of our papers.
I will second you. I raised my hand, but there is Councillor Walton, I think, raised his hand before me. I don't know if he can second it or you just want to chip in.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Ashton. Jeanette, with Councillor Ashton's proposal there,
Yes.
what would be the step?
Well, it's proposed and Councillor Danny has seconded it. If there were no further comments, he could move to the vote, but the portfolio, Councillor Welton wishes to address the committee.
Indeed. Councillor Welton?
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. Just a few comments I'd like to make, just to put a different, well, not a different spin on it, but maybe an alternative line. Clive has been working really hard on this for a very long time. And a year ago, some of the conversations that we're having now regarding Boston would have been laughed out of the room. We would have been, you know, it would have been a county council's responsibility or whatever, or it's industry led. What Clive has done is something that a lot of local authorities don't do. And this was very evident when we met a company several weeks ago that were thinking on coming to Boston. And one of the comments they made is that all the other local authorities, areas that they were looking at developing their business, said that the only time that the council were interested was when they wanted to charge them for something. And they were very impressed with the delegation from this council that wanted to work with them. And they were impressed with the package of support that was put together for them, not just around what the council could do, but how the council, I'll say the council, but I mean Clive and his team, what they were putting together to facilitate that business coming to Boston. So working and putting links into the college, putting links into the job centre to do recruitment, putting links into other business, putting links into transport and infrastructure and all the other things and logistics. And they were blown away by just how much Boston Borough Council wanted to help them develop within our town. And this package, or this paper which talks about the port, it's much, much bigger than the port. Boston's been a port, as Councillor Ashton said, for many, many generations, many years. And this isn't about just the port. This is the seed. This is about repurposing our town. It's about saying we have a port, we have a rail link, we have road links, we have workforce, we have the infrastructure, although nowhere near where we want it to be. But you've got to start somewhere. Recently, the conversations that Clive's had and some of the meetings I've had with Clive and other people would never have happened 12 months or 18 months ago, because we weren't reaching high enough to develop what we want. So we're not looking at about the next 6 months or the next 6 years. We're looking at, was it Councillor Skinner said, what's the time frame? Well, the time frame is for the next 50 years. And there are things that are already happening now. There is already business coming to this town. There are already suppliers coming to this town. There's already logistic companies that want to come and base themselves in this town. And it all revolves around the port. And when you look at the figures of the people that work in the food industry locally, 40,000 people. 37 or 39, so just under 40% of the people that work in the food industry in South Holland live in Boston. And that adds up to about 15,500 people. So 15,500 people that live in our town, that shop in our town, that call this their home, rely on us taking forward and looking to protect what we've got, but take it to another step. And when you look at the Thames ports and the ports in the southeast, they are crammed solid. And there are ships sitting in the tide that haven't been able to get into the dock to discharge their cargo and move on. And the cost implication on them, on the shipping agents for that kind of disruption is massive. Clive found the gap in the market on this quite a while ago, Clive and Michelle, and they've been talking to partners for a long time. And only in the last several months has it all started to link together. And this isn't the council's project. It isn't Boston Borough Council that are doing this. What this is, it's the people that employ people in this town. So all of them businesses have been facilitated by this council. So the council is facilitating all of this. It's not making it happen. it's bringing people together. So what we are doing differently to everywhere else, we're not saying the port's not ours as a council, we don't own the port, therefore it's nothing to do with us, it's business. We're not saying that factory, it doesn't belong to us, therefore it's for them to do what they need to do. What the team are doing is bringing all these people together. The suppliers, the employers, the factories, the farms, the logistics, the port, the road, the rail, all of that, they're bringing them in a room and they're knocking their heads together. And that, from a council doing that, is absolutely amazing. And watching it from my point of view and standing back and watching what our officers are doing to facilitate the future of this town is absolutely phenomenal. And they do it on a budget of nothing. Some towns or some of the big cities have economic development budget that run into millions. Ours probably runs into Clive's salary. And he drives forward, or his department drives forward an economic development program that some of the big cities in this country would die for. And how he does that, I've got no idea. But all I can say is that this is just the beginning. This paper is just the very, very beginning of some very, very big projects that are going to happen in this town over the short term, medium term, and the long term. So I just thought I'd sort of fill in a few of them gaps. And Clive's not good at blowing his own trumpet, so I'll blow it for him. Thank you, Clive.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. Jeanette, just quickly, we have Councillor Ashton's proposal that's been seconded there, but we also have waiting to speak Councillor Dorian, followed by again Councillor Ashton. Which order should we do it in?
Oh, we only need to go the vote when everyone's commented and nobody else wants to speak. Chairman, thank you.
Fine. Councillor Dorian.
Thank you, Chairman. I can only take so much hyperbole in one night, so I've got some questions for Councillor Welton. Councillor Welton, you mentioned that there are 15,500 employees in the South Holland District businesses that live in Boston. And I inferred from what you said that their jobs might be at risk if we don't go ahead with this tonight. Would you speak to that, please?
No, not at all. I didn't infer that at all. What I said was that that's how many people rely on their jobs. I'm not.
I inferred.
You're inferring.
You imply. What I hear, I infer.
Sorry to interrupt there, but if we could just have one at a time, given that it's virtual, that would really, really help out. Councillor Welton.
I think we need to ask for the question to be repeated, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Yes, I said I inferred from what you said. Only the hearer can infer something. The speaker implies something. So I inferred the jobs that currently are held by 15,500 people in Boston might be in some jeopardy if we don't go ahead this evening. Because you spoke quite at some length about the number of people who work in South Holland, but who live in Boston Borough, who spend money and who uses supermarkets, etc., etc. So I asked you to speak to that.
Thank you. Councillor Welton.
Yeah, fine. I was just giving you figures of the number of people that work in certain places and the people that live in this town and rely on things outside our borough. And, you know, it's a fact. That's what it is. There is no inference at all that they may or may not lose their jobs. The paper in front of you hasn't been to Cabinet for decisions. It's come here out of Curtis. You know, Curtis, we had the full member briefing, and out of courtesy, I recommended, I think, that we send it to Cabinet to scrutiny. Normally, decision would be made at the executive and then come here, but we thought it would be a good thing to do for scrutiny to look at the report prior to Cabinet, so that we could look at recommendations that scrutiny might want to make to the report, so that we make a good decision. But there's no inference that people would be losing their jobs at all. What the department is doing is working on future projects to make sure that the employment prospects of people in this town increases exponentially year on year. which I think is the right thing that we as a council should be doing.
Okay, may I come back to you?
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, good scrutiny, as we know, would send pre-scrutiny decisions, or sorry, pre-cabinet decisions to scrutiny for scrutiny to look at. It's nothing to celebrate the fact that you normally make decisions and then think about scrutiny afterwards. So moving on, you mentioned that some councils have economic development budgets in the millions of pounds. What councils might they be?
Probably some of the really, really big cities. I couldn't give you one offhand. I think the inference, if we're talking of that I was trying to make, is that we do things on a shoestring, and there are some very, very big councils in this country that have massive budgets. Maybe I shouldn't have said millions, maybe I should have said 100,000s, because I can't say that there's somebody with a million. But I think the intention of what I was saying was very clear. Clive does an amazing job on nothing, and other towns and cities that have massive budgets would be very envious of what we managed to do for the budgets that we have.
Thank you. May I come back to you?
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for admitting that that exaggeration, Councillor Welton. It's important, and I do agree with you. In fact, I do agree with you that we do things on a budget, on a shoestring, if you will, because we've had 10 years of austerity under your Conservative government, Councillor Welton. If we can look at page 10, I'm looking at the 1.5, where it talks about access to the Port of Boston and then access to efficient road and rail links. Councillor Welton, I must confess not to have a brilliant working knowledge of the Port of Boston, but I am led to believe that they're limited in their capacity due to the size of vessels that can access the port, either through the size of the gate, the entrance to the dock, or the silting up of the river and the deep bottom boats not being able to get upriver. So how are we going to expand the Port of Boston if it remains at its current size? How would that actually work?
I think I'll have to confess the same as you, Councillor Doran. I'm not an expert in ports and rivers and all that. But as I said clearly earlier, this isn't about us doing this. This is about this council facilitating people together, the experts, the people that, you know, the people that know about employing people, people that know about building factories, people that know about building ports, people that know about, you know, rail and road and all the other things. And that's what we're doing, is we're facilitating this. We're getting all them people in the room together so that they are having conversations that they wouldn't otherwise be having if we as a council weren't facilitating that. And that's all it is. You know, we're getting people together. We're getting people interested in Boston. We're making sure that Boston is out there, and it's not talked about within the city walls. It's talked about all across this country. It's talked about in places across the world. There are discussions that I had a conversation with Clive today, and there's been discussions about Boston and its food producing capacity and the port thousands of miles away. I'm not going to say where, but a very, very long way away in, you know, internationally. And that is, for our town, fantastic. If we can get people talking about the positive things that are happening in Boston on the other side of the globe, then that's where things start. And it's about conversations. Clive's indicating to speak, so I'll defer to him as well.
Clive, would you like to come in?
Yes, and no, thank you, councillors. Also, I suppose we mustn't lose sight of actually spring 2022 is when the port is actually finished being widened by another 2 meters. So you can actually get sort of wider berth ships coming up the river and actually into the port itself. So so we will be able, and obviously technology as well will help with the size and the new developments of new boats and how they navigate up the river. So we're fairly confident that we could improve the footprint of the port by just utilising it better, or I say we, the Port of Victoria Group who owns it, but also going forward, we're looking at how we can use that extra 2 meters beam width to actually support different products coming through.
Okay, thank you. So if I could come back to Councillor Welton, if that's all right, Chair. You mentioned something about you're no expert in building ports. Is there any intention to build a new port, or is the intention to stick with the port that we currently have?
Who knows what the future may hold, Councillor Dorian?
I think it's an important question, Councillor Welton.
I don't have a crystal ball. I couldn't tell you, whatever the intentions are. Who knows what's going to happen in 20, 30 years' time? Who's going to know where this town goes? All we're doing today is we're setting out that initial part. And that's where we are. That's what was said earlier. This is the beginning of where we go. And these conversations, this is where they start. And that's it. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Okay, thank you.
I hope big things will happen, because that's the point. But who does actually know?
Who knows? Well, I just hope you've been very honest with the people of Boston, Councillor Welton. Under 1.6, who have the Dutch been talking to? Anyone in Boston Borough Council?
Mr. Gibbon?
Right. Some of the commercial partners that we're working with, some of the importers have Dutch businesses. They have Dutch connections, so that the conversations with our Dutch partners are, I suppose you would probably call, third party. So they haven't actually directly contacted Boston Borough, but obviously they are in contact with the Boston Port, because of the navigational rights, and also our business community.
Okay. Has anyone in Boston Borough Council been in talks with the Dutch at all, Councillor Welton?
Gibbon?
No, we haven't, not directly. But again, it's all done through the partners that sit around the table, and our commercial, well, I say that the commercial partners that's plugged into the Gateway to Growth project.
Okay, but they made it into the report. Councillor Welton, under 2.1, who is from Boston Borough Council, who is part of the steering group?
I'll defer that again to Mr. Gibbon. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Doyle, if you could just repeat that question.
You see, the thing is, I'm old school. We're here to scrutinise political decisions made by politicians. And that's why I'm asking the questions of the portfolio holder, because this is your gig, Councillor Welton. You're supposed to know it. So I'm asking, who is on the steering group from Boston Borough Council under 2.1?
I understand your question, Councillor Dorian, and I'm asking Mr. Gibbon to answer the question for me. He's my lead officer, and we are part of a team. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, on the steering group from Boston Borough Council is myself and Michelle Sachs.
Okay, no political involvement there in that.
No, because it is just purely a. I suppose really it's got no political steer. It's really a commercial venture. It's working with commercial partners. We do have subgroups where Councillor Welton and Councillor Skinner will be plugged into those, which are on page or section 2.1 under the 4 subgroups. So we do have political influence there from both county and Boston Borough Council, and indeed South Holland District Council.
Good, thank you. I'm pleased to hear that. So, Councillor Welton, which subgroup are you on then?
Logistics and investment.
Okay, and Councillor Skinner?
The other two, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on, under 2.5, I'm actually going to speak up for the people of Boston now, who are sick and tired of all the money going to Lincoln, for the majority of our council tax, in fact, going to Lincoln, and for us getting the breadcrumbs off the table that they deign to sweep off. And so I'm appalled at 2.5 that the Lincolnshire County Council have only agreed to support this bid, providing that we make a financial contribution. I really don't think that's good enough, because we don't have responsibility for highways. That's the County Council's responsibility. And they're kind of holding a gun to our heads, if you will, and I seriously object to that. But to move that point along, Councillor Welton, how much are the County Council going to put in if this £20,000 goes through?
I don't know. Maybe Mr. Gibbon could identify the exact amount. It's ongoing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so in theory, we're putting £20,000 in, and so is South Holland District Council. I'll have to get back to you with the exact figures from county. I don't have those to hand at the moment, but there is 2 or 3 other partners as well, but I can get those figures for you.
Okay, so how much is the feasibility study going to cost, Councillor Welton, in total?
I don't think that has totally been put together yet. Like I say, we're at early stages, but go back to your earlier comments. I agree with the principle in what you're saying, that that we are beholden, and them kind of questions. Maybe it might be a question that you would like to take to county and ask them directly. I think that would be very helpful. The feasibility studies are there, and we're at a stage where we want to put our share in so that we get our share out. So we're setting how much we're putting in. We're not setting the budget for that feasibility. We are setting how much we are willing to put there. So whether the feasibility study is 50 grand or 50 million, we are putting in a small share. And that isn't going to change. That's what we've got towards that, and that's it. So what the outcome of that or the total budget is irrelevant. It's how much we're willing to start the process off. And we can talk about it all night, but Mr. Gibbon said he'll give you the final figures once he gets them, and I think we should leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I don't agree. I don't agree with the premise that it doesn't matter what it costs. It does matter what it costs. It matters what our contribution is compared to other partners. And I would think that at the very least, you would know the ballpark figure of what the feasibility study was going to be. You suggested, was it going to be millions or 50,000? There's a vast difference in those figures, and those figures matter, especially after 10 years of austerity. And to your point about, yes, go and ask the County Council, and you agree with me, and for me to pressure the County Council that we don't want breadcrumbs off the table. We have five county councillors, Councillor Welton, from your Conservative Party representing Boston people. It's for them. They should be putting Boston people's interests first, last and always, in fact. And it's something that grieves me a great deal. If you don't mind, Chair, I've just got 2 more questions. Councillor Welton, we took a vote at full council in January of this year, saying that any proposals that we put forward, any papers we put forward, would have climate change and environmental implications on them. There are none to this report. Could you tell me why, please?
Yes, I will. Because this is a report that is about a report that's going to Cabinet. So you can't put the only climatic impact that this report actually has in the format it has for the decision to be made this evening and the discussion this evening is how many pieces of paper we've printed out. We're not building anything. We're not doing anything. We are looking at putting some money towards a feasibility. We're instructing our officers to continue with the project, And, you know, we're not building anything in this paper, are we? So, you know, the impact is how many pieces of paper I've printed and put on my desk whilst doing this report. As the programme goes forward, there will be environmental impact assessments for all the development works that go on.
So the report should have had a nil impact assessment on there, shouldn't it? It shouldn't just be void.
Well, you're dead right, Councillor Dorian, because I did an environmental impact assessment today and there was no impact on it, and that the report I wrote did have no impact, but it showed that an assessment was done. So I shall make sure my officers are fully on board with putting a nil mark in the box if there is no impact. Thank you for
as they
raising
have
that.
done for equality, etc., etc. My
Yes.
last question is: the funding you intend to use is to come from the Transformation Fund. Currently, what's the Transformation Fund used for, Councillor Welton?
Sorry, I've no idea what you're trying to ask, and in the whole, the Transformation Fund is not in my remit, so it's not something that I've taken a great interest in. I focus on my own portfolio, but maybe that's a question that you could ask the Portfolio for Finance.
Well, maybe that's something you could ask the Portfolio
I
for
will.
Finance when you take it to Cabinet. I know what the Transformation Fund's used for, and it's not for feasibility studies like this. So I'm not going to support this this evening. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me have an ongoing dialogue with Councillor Welton for what it was worth. I'll leave it there.
I agree totally, Councillor Dorian.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. I think it's important to recap a few comments. This is very much at its concept stage. We are discussing here about providing financial support for a study at this current moment in time. So if any councillors have any more specific questions that they have, you know, it isn't just at this meeting. You can always ask them after the meeting. The interesting point that was brought up about size of vessels, and Clive there mentioned about the widening of 2 meters. Now I know Rotterdam is also a very busy port at the moment, which takes larger vessels. The shipments are put onto smaller vessels, and then those are then sent off to their various locations. So being limited to a certain size of vessel doesn't mean we won't necessarily be not as busy as other ports. It could actually be a certain blessing again within a niche to be able to accommodate more of these medium to small size vessels, which is worth noting. Now, a couple other things. Councillor Evans, thank you for joining us there. Good to see you. And Councillor Ashton, thank you for waiting patiently. Please ask your question.
Thank you. I wasn't so much intending to ask a question as to try and cheer everyone back up again. Doesn't politics always seem very dull when, rather than following the example that we've got here of talking up our town, talking up our opportunity? Politics becomes very dull when all we can do is focus on the negatives. To scowl, to be scathing, to find every opportunity to put the boot in. Really isn't what either scrutiny or any of us, I feel, come in to do this for. What I was really going to say is to say thank you so much on the back of what Councillor Welton was saying about what the team has put in, what Mr. Gibbon, what Mrs. Sachs has put in to get this project to this stage. To get something on the table that brings so many of these threads, so many of these strands together. And at the end of the day, as I said earlier, it's £20,000, which has the ability to unlock so much of potential for our town. It's a vote of confidence from, I hope, our council, and if we can support what I moved a few moments ago, it's a vote of confidence from this scrutiny committee. in the work that has gone into this, the exciting opportunities that our town has got. And I will give anyone a thorough cheer if I hear them talking up our town and the opportunities that we've got, because that's, you know, an awful lot of the market out there depends on confidence. People's jobs, people's livelihoods depends on confidence. It depends on us as local politicians, local leaders, having the confidence to back our town, to back our council officers when they're going out there to talk to people across the world, to bring trade, to generate investment, to generate ideas. This is the exciting stuff, and the mind boggles that you could find much of a negative in any of that. And I go one stage further. If my seconder would indulge me, I would add to the proposition that I have already made the thanks of this scrutiny committee to Mr. Gibbon and to Mrs. Sachs and the economic development team for the work that they're doing on behalf of this council and on the behalf of the people whose jobs and livelihoods, they don't necessarily depend on this, but if we can do anything to grow our economy, to grow those opportunities, then these are people that that will genuinely benefit from this work. And I would love to see Boston Borough, I'd love to see Mr. Gibbon to have the kind of economic development budget that some much bigger councils are able to enjoy, because I know that every brass farthing of it would be incredibly well spent. And I think it's time to give a cheer for the work that's being done on our behalf, and the work that's being done on behalf of the people that we're elected here to represent. So I would add, as a further point to the two, that we note and support the recommendations, and also that we note our thanks to the economic development team for putting this together and the work that they do.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Wellborn.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd love to reiterate what Councillor Ashton has just said. As a lifelong resident of the town of Boston and somebody who lived near the port for a number of years, and at the time when the huge ships used to come in, and I used to take my children to look round the ships at a weekend when Skinner's Ice Cream used to sit on there, it would be amazing to see this port brought back into something that Boston could be once again very proud of. And I really think that what the plan has been brought together by Clive and Michelle is fantastic. We are not making decisions on anything apart from taking the plan forward. Yes, there will be financial implications to the feasibility study, which we all understand. And in the future, then it's a decision we will make for that. But I think tonight, to look at this plan and to take it forward, I fully reiterate what Councillor Ashton says, and I think that Councillor Welton has done very well to put his input in, and as I say, Councillor Gibbon, Clive Gibbon has done a fantastic report with Michelle, and yes, I'll second what Councillor Ashton says. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wellborn. Councillor Skinner. Councillor Skinner.
So I do apologise. I pressed my video button and it didn't work the first time. I would just like to say that this project and the things that could come forward from it will be supporting the youth of this town. All too often people complain that the youth don't stop in Boston. If this brings more jobs to Boston, I can't see why people would be against it, to be quite honest. And I would like to thank Michelle Sachs and Clive Gibbon for the work that they've done for it. And hopefully the youth of Boston will help the town grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say the same really as Councillor Wellborn, Councillor Ashton and Councillor Skinner so nicely put. What an exciting opportunity. I'm so excited. This is what being a councillor is all about. Something happening, something wonderful, just within our grasp, just within our reach, making people chat about positive stuff to do with Boston and moving forward. I'm just so excited. I mean, thank you so much to Michelle and the team and that have put this together. And I think Port of Boston, Gateway to Growth. I think that's an excellent, I want that on a t-shirt. I think this is wonderful. And thank you for all the hard work that's gone into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Dunning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I will say some few words and then probably Councillor Ashton has asked me if I will second his thanks, which is I did in my my introduction when I was talking. What I want to say is we have to be positive sometimes. We have to be, optimistic sometimes. I think Boston has a very strategic position on the east coast of this country. And we have a port on our doorsteps. And I think we shouldn't be afraid or hesitate to take an opportunity. I think instead of that, we should be taking every opportunity comes next to us. We have to grab it. If we're going to spend a little bit of money for any sort of studies, we should go for it because we have to work for it. That's the challenge we are having. We have to challenge ourselves. We have to find the ways of achieving our goals. And I think it will make the town coming together. I mean, I shouldn't say me or myself. Last year, I did, before COVID last year, almost 16 international interviews about Brexit. And people, they come and see me in the coffee shop. And I talk to a lot of different people from Russia to Japan, from Germany to Austria, from Switzerland, Italy, Spain, France, many times France. I did a radio station with the California radio station, which is, they call it Marketplace. I had an interview with the Washington Times. So there's a lot of things. But when you talk positive about the town, they really, these people, they embrace it. And then they start seeing the town, it's beautiful. Yes, it can prosper. We are as any other towns or cities in the world. We will have our minuses, we will have our pluses. But as I said, we have to take the opportunity. We have to be a business people now, and we have to go forward. Negativity, I don't think it will deliver what we are wishing for, but we can work all together as councillors, and we have to debate things in the right way, and we have to go forward. The challenge is there, the opportunity is there. We should take it and grab it and give something to Boston. Boston needs a development. Boston needs to get all these bad clouds from the air and start breathing again. This is the opportunity. Boston has been a town port for centuries. Boston has has received ships during the First World War as a hospital ships. This town has given a lot of things to this country. We should bring the prosperity to us back. And I think this is our time, this is our era, and I hope we will go all forward for it. I second you, Councillor Ashton, and I really salute Michelle and Clive and also Nigel, and I will push Nigel to work harder, and we have to do that. And we are doing it already. So we are not very easy guys with Nigel, but I will give them my blessing, and I hope they will get it all right. And I would love to see Boston prospering again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Danny. Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry about the delay. Just trying to get the system to work properly. Well, I agree with much of what's been said tonight. I don't really have any disagreements with anybody, but I only think I do recall that the port itself is tidal. And the other fact about it is that it's not a deep water port. So we don't have quite the same strengths as, say, Felixstowe or Immingham or whatever. So we do have an issue there. I've no objection to people putting in, and praising the town and pushing for the port to be developed. But I worry about that because it's only one aspect. And we've got to look at the way the world is developing at the present minute. And we need to be able to look at the way future businesses will go. We do have some assets here, and we have tend to be good housing. It's relatively cheap, very good schools, and other aspects which are to our advantage. And when we're thinking about the commercial aspects of this town, We need to push those very, very hard. I do think that grammar schools are a good idea. I've always supported grammar school education, and I know a lot of people do so also, and that is an asset for us. I declare an interest, by the way, Chairman, Governor of Boston Grammar School, so I'll just put that on one side, okay? I have to say that, otherwise I get into trouble, won't I? So I have an interest there, shall we say. But I think that we do need to be careful about putting all eggs in one basket in a way and just looking at the port, because I think it's just one aspect. And we have a lot of other things to recommend this area, not just the port. So the other thing, I've come back to what I pointed out originally about the foreign direct investment and the fact that £2.1 trillion or $1 trillion, second only to the United States, comes to this country, has come to this country pretty well every year. We need to have a chunk of that. That's a lot of money. 2.1 trillion, you know, that's a lot of money. And the government needs to make sure that a good chunk of that, well, a little bit of it, should I say a little bit, let's say 1% of that comes our way. 1% would be a lot of money, wouldn't it? So we need to make sure the government invests in areas like our own here, not just the port, port's important, but not just the port. There are other things here which are very important, which may be more productive in the future for the people who live here than just the port. So I've got no objection to this report. It's been well written and all that, and I will support it. But we need to be careful that we just put all our eggs in one basket. We need to be looking at the other areas where we can make a real name for Boston. Boston has to be forward-looking, not backward-looking, forward-looking. There is one other aspect I would like to mention, that perhaps I shouldn't really, but you know that Boston Grammar School has a link with America and Boston, the United States. The first public school in America was the Boston Latin School, and it was developed on the lines of Boston Grammar School. I have already suggested to the governors of Boston Grammar School that they look at the possibilities of a link. Maybe we as a council should be looking at that link with Boston, America as well. There's a link there. We need to take every opportunity to encourage those links with other places. The port, yeah, why not? But maybe America also, Massachusetts. We need to be thinking about that and our link there. So we have an opportunity, Boston Grammar School, Boston Latin School. Boston Latin School is one of the top schools in America. We have a link with America. Are we making every opportunity work for us? I don't know. Anyway, I will vote for the report. Got no problems otherwise. I'll vote for the report. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Woodliff. Now, I'm aware that we've got Councillor Danny and Councillor Welton and now Councillor Dorian wishing to speak there. If anybody has any new points to bring to the table, then do raise your hand. Otherwise, after this, I'll look to move the meeting on. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity. Just to answer the question by Councillor Woodliff about the connection with Boston and Massachusetts. I was going to travel this year from my own money to go and see them, and I was going to try to take my gown and my chains of office, because that's my aim, is to represent Boston in the best I can, because I do believe people buy you before they buy your product. But unfortunately with COVID, we couldn't. But I'm waiting. If next year things will be much more easier, I can guarantee you that I will go with the Lady Mayoress and myself, and I'm going to use my own money to go and represent Boston. For me, I belong to Boston. Boston is part of me. I'm part of Boston. And that's what I would like to say to Councillor Woodliff. Unfortunately, since I've become a mayor and some two mayors before me, we didn't have the budget. But before us, they used to travel on the account of the Boston Borough Council to Boston. But unfortunately, now we don't have it. But I will do it, and I will make my dream come true. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing to say that.
Thank you, Councillor Danny. Councillor Welton.
Thank you, Chairman. Just coming back on what Councillor Woodliff has raised about eggs in one basket. This is just one of many baskets that Mr. Gibbon has at this moment in time, and he is like a Greek plate spinner at the moment, and spinning many. When you talked about links with America, our corporate priorities, new corporate priorities, say promotion of Boston regionally and nationally as a place to live and work and visit, develop twinning arrangements to further promote Boston internationally, and finally build on the transatlantic relationship with Boston, USA. That is in our corporate priorities now, and something that we are looking at moving forward as best we can. So, you know, that these things are already there. And this report tonight is just one report of many things that are happening within this council. Many positive things that are putting Boston, Lincolnshire on the map. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. Councillor Dorian. Councillor Dorian, your mic.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to come back and make sure people understood the background to my comments. I love Boston. I've made Boston my home for the last 39 years, and I consider myself to be a Bostonian. Our job here tonight is to scrutinise, Mr. Chairman. We're here to scrutinise the report that we got sent, that we got emailed, that we should have read, but I can see a lot of you haven't read it. And to question the portfolio holder on the contents of the report. And on some of the technical aspects, we can question the officers, but on the political stuff and the strategic stuff, we should be questioning the portfolio holder. I don't come here to listen to glib comments about rah, 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 Boston or ice cream here. That's not what scrutiny is about. That's not why I'm on scrutiny. Our job is to do a specific task. And if you don't want to do the task, don't be on scrutiny. But don't complain when people do it properly. I'll say that. So I know why I'm not going to support this tonight. And it's because I know what the Transformation Fund is for. I don't think it's for this purpose. If I'm proved wrong, I will apologise and I will support it when the time comes. But Councillor Welton could not answer the question about the Transformation Fund. And in addition to that, I'd also say, if you're going to be chairman of this committee, please run your committee in the proper way and let's do scrutiny properly. And if people need training, let's get them training. Let's help them to understand scrutiny and to be able to do it effectively and properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Jeanette, we've had a proposal moved and seconded. So would we be able to now to move on to the vote?
Yes, Chairman. It's been proposed and seconded that the recommendation set out on page 7 be moved, with the addition that the recommendations to Cabinet are supported as well as noted, and also the addition of relaying thanks to Mr. Gibbon, Mrs. Sachs and the Economic Development team. I'll read out members' names in alphabetical order. If you could indicate whether you are for, against or wish to abstain. Thank you. Councillor Tom Ashton.
For.
Councillor Alan Bell.
For.
Councillor George Corner, Chairman.
For.
Councillor Anton Danny.
For.
Councillor Anne Dorian.
Against.
Councillor Deborah Evans.
For.
Councillor Martin Howard.
For.
Councillor Frank Pickett.
For.
Councillor Judith Skinner.
For.
Councillor Judith Wellborn.
For.
Councillor Stephen Woodliff.
For.
That's clearly carried. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette, for that. And that concludes that matter. And that would bring us on to the second part, which is discussing the work programme. Okay, members. So on page 19 of the document pack there, we can see the work programme going forwards. On the 10th of December, on the next meeting, it doesn't give us a lot of time until that date. So I'm conscious of what matter we choose to discuss on this point to give the relevant person enough time to compile a report worth scrutinising in detail. but I'll open the floor to people to make any comments, and Andy as well, if you'd like to come in, more than welcome to do so.
Very happy I start, Chairman. At the last committee, and we've not had the opportunity to fill out the programme, if you recall, the former chairman asked for some support in an item, and we suggested and agreed that we would have a scrutiny where the committee could assure itself of the authority's environmental health role throughout COVID. So that's certainly an item that I've asked to be prepared for the committee to come forward on the 10th of December.
Thank you. We have other potential items that could be brought forward, which include homelessness, drug and alcohol issues in Boston, health activity referrals. Obviously, with gym memberships been massively effective in recent times, that's something to consider. Andy, how big an item would you consider in the environmental health there on the 10th of December to discuss? How many other number of items could we look to add, or what amount of time does that deserve?
Somewhat of a $6 million question, Chairman. It depends how much assurance the committee wants to do within its terms of reference. What I've asked my colleagues to do is to really set out the function of the Environmental Health Service, one of the key areas within the committee's portfolio, of its role during the COVID crisis, from the beginning through to present, to really set out for you the impacts of suspending the food safety programme and so on, so that you can then challenge and question officers to ensure that we continue to fulfil our duties despite the implications of coronavirus on the community. There's quite a lot. There's quite a lot of information that I think will come forward. What I would hope is that going through the report would take no more than 15-20 minutes itself, and that, of course, then will depend on how many questions that generates. If you want to add another item to your committee, Chairman, what members may wish to do is to send in questions in advance of the evening so that responses could be prepared, and then you could ask follow-ups thereafter. If you want to put another item forward, that might assist in the process. But as you say, in terms of other substantial items, if you want to suggest them, I'm more than happy to give you my advice on whether I think that the relevant information can be put forward in advance of the 10th, given the advanced publication for that agenda.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Wellborn.
Yeah, I was thinking with the health and environmental health one, if we could join it with the health and well-being, as you said, with gyms being shut, as a combined effort. And I would like, could we put homelessness through till April, when all the sort of implementations that are going on at the minute will have ceased, so we can have a proper report on the impact after the March, when everything will they'll be back on the streets or whatever. Would that work for the rest of the committee? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wellborn. Andy, would you wish to comment on that regarding homelessness for April?
Not my area anymore, Mr. Chairman, but I'm sure the lead officer would be delighted with that much lead-in time.
Okay. Well, I think if everyone's in agreement, I'm happy to put that on to April. And Councillor Evans, you've indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a little bit worried about moving homelessness till April, because what's happening at the moment is we need to sort of make sure everything's going ahead with the new place that's opening. We've got 15 people ready to move in. I spoke to a gentleman the other day, and he said he's waiting to move in, but he's still homeless while he's waiting to move in. Somebody else, another gentleman I helped, hopefully he is in somewhere, and I just feel we're at the worst time, the coldest time, And I don't want us to take our eye off the ball when we've had all this sort of push to get the homeless off the street. So I feel April, it's gone past all the cold weather, it's becoming spring, and I think we need to be sort of, if possible, sooner. I agree with what Councillor Welburn said about putting things together, but it's the homelessness that's worrying me, because there is still 1 or 2 people out there that are slipping through the net. Or, you know, I know the P3 officers are doing an amazing job, absolutely amazing, but it's just coming up to that time when you really want everybody to have a home, you know. So if we could do it early, it would make my conscience feel better. But whether we can fit it in, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, would there be feasibility then to look at adding it to February's agenda?
Yeah, certainly, Chairman. 10th of December, whilst I say housing's not my area anymore, I certainly know that my colleague, Michelle Howard, has got quite a job of work on her hands, leading the teams both here and at East Lindsey, with the immediate here and now challenges of homelessness, particularly during the second lockdown. But February would give plenty of time to set out for the committee a whole range of interventions that the teams have done in respect of homelessness and the support services that have been provided to those in Boston that have found themselves in that dreadful situation. There would be, what my colleague would also be able to set out the progress. We've recently been awarded as a local authority funding to secure new accommodation for entrenched rough sleepers. That has been awarded by MHCLG to the local authority very recently. The delivery time for that is 31st of March. So by February, you would be able to receive a real-time update of the progress on delivery of additional units of accommodation. Again, there's a whole range of information that could come to you, and you could then challenge and scrutinise that in fulfilling the real scrutiny function, ensuring yourself that the local authority is discharging its duties, is delivering against our corporate priorities, and really hold us to account as officers for our performance in doing so.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Welborn, if you're happy there, we'll look to go for February then.
That's brilliant. Yes, thank you, George.
Thank you. Okay, and I know there's a number of other things of different services, sectors massively impacted by COVID that I think deserve scrutiny, but the problem with bringing them forward to whether it's adding it to December, February, maybe even April's agenda is that the dust hasn't settled yet. And I think it'd be remiss of us to challenge or scrutinise certain sectors or services which are still dealing with this situation. I don't think that would look good on the council's behalf by any means. So no one has a crystal ball how long this is going to last or go on for, but I certainly see whether it's mid or end of next year when the dust has more settled, that we could start to scrutinise how things have gone and how we've handled things, how other sectors have handled things, if everyone can see where I'm coming from there. Does anyone else have any comments to make? Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I was going to comment on the COVID-19. We would like to have probably an update, or we can scrutinise, or we can help with ideas wherever with the officers probably in the 10th of December, because then COVID has been since March. So we're talking about almost 9 months of this pandemic. So if we're going to go until next year, I think it's time for us probably to have a look at it and probably not scrutinize it or criticize the way the officers dealt with it, but I think we can give a help and we see where we are wrong, because unfortunately the reality of it is a lot of residents in Boston, they don't know what they're going to do. People are confused, and I think it will be our opportunity probably to update our brains a little bit and talk about it again and see where we go and see if there is other plans for next year, because some ministers, they say that things will stay until 2022. Some they say until October 2021. So people are confused, but I think if we have the plans in front of us, and if there is any mistakes, we can correct them going forward for next year. I would think it would be good for us to do that in December.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Andy, your comments on that?
Yes, of course. I mean, should the committee want something, then I can work with my colleagues. It's really, I suppose, how we frame that as a valid scrutiny item, because within the time frame available, it would probably be more of an information item. That said, by December, even if it's not available for publication in the written papers in advance of the meeting, we may know more where we are nationally in terms of vaccination. We'll know certainly, I think, more where we are locally with testing, tracing and others as we come out, hopefully come out of the second phase lockdown. So, Chairman, if you were happy to receive more of an item for information and then question whether it's a direct scrutiny item, I would struggle to advise you on that, really.
I think an overview / point of information would serve us well, especially then for getting more of an idea of what we do then want to scrutinise going into next year, maybe, and serve as a bit of a launch pad. And like Councillor Danny says, to show that we are showing a keen interest in seeing what's going on. Councillor Dorrian.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on this point, I'd just like to remind you that the name of our committee is Corporate and Community. So I would suggest that we look at the corporate response to COVID. I take Andy's point, it's very valid. December is, you couldn't possibly get a report together for then. We could slot a meeting, an extra meeting in January. And what my suggestion would be is to look at how the council corporately responded to COVID, how the council dealt with the issues. It might be that we look to do a joint scrutiny with East Lindsey and redouble our efforts, put an extra meeting in, but join up with them. And then use that as a springboard to give officers more time to prepare a report as to how COVID impacted the community and any lessons that we might need to learn as a local government organisation going forward. So that would be my suggestion, that we split out the corporate from the community and do 2 separate COVID scrutiny meetings. And if they have to be just a standalone item, that might be quite useful.
Thank you, Councillor Dorrian.
Thank you.
Some really valid points that you bring up there. I think I'm torn because it's all about timing. Timing is absolutely key here. And it's a case of we want to carry out our role effectively, but then I'm conscious of the officers and various employees' resources and time. Andy, what do you make of Councillor Dorrian's suggestion there for potential January meeting or with the connection with East Lindsey?
Again, I'll have to ask my colleagues, but I think the timing would certainly be better. And I mean, Councillor Dorrian's point is absolutely spot on. The purpose of scrutiny is that items come forward through the committee. I think that hits an incredible number of the core functions of scrutiny, and certainly happy to facilitate a single topic for a January meeting if that's what the committee wish to put in. We can, as officers, provide a whole range of, you know, real value information, statistics, explanation. And by doing it, looking at the corporate response, that gives you a real opportunity, again, to come back, as I said earlier, to challenge officers and hold us to account in terms of how we have delivered those high-level strategic objectives that have been set out for us.
Thank you, Andy. Do any other members have any comments that they wish to make around these suggestions? Okay then, well, without anyone wishing to make any further comments there, then I do agree that from Councillor Dorrian's points there, it needs to be a single agenda item to be able to properly scrutinise something of this magnitude. So if everyone's in agreement, we'd look to slot in a meeting in January to discuss this. Then that leaves us with February with the homelessness and the budget setting report. In December, we've got the environmental health and the overview of COVID. And April is still empty at the moment. Brilliant. Well, Jeanette, I don't know if you've made a note of that there to circulate that to members with the updated work programme.
Yes, Chairman, I have.
Thank you. And with
Thank
that,
you.
I'll conclude the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanette.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, on an excellent meeting.
Thank you.